Hey everybody, welcome. I know there's a lot of sessions going on and there's a lot of buildings to navigate, so thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us here today. I can feel your thoughts and your hopes and dreams, and I can sense that you are looking forward to a jam-packed generative AI session, and you're going to want to deal with a whole bunch of Gen AI stuff. I hate to disappoint you, but this is probably going to be the least Gen AI session at reInvent. So we know what it's not going to be. Let's talk about what it is. What this is going to be is the start of a modernization journey. And when we say start, we talk about beginning with a migration and then moving into modernization afterwards. We are really excited to share this with you and talk to you about what it's going to be like going forward running VMware within AWS. As a quick introduction, my name is Andy Reedy. I lead the product team within EC2 that is responsible for our joint VMware engineering efforts. So I've traditionally worked on services like VMware Cloud and AWS, VMware Cloud and AWS Outposts, and now the new Elastic VMware service. I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, Arthi Raju. Arthi and I have worked together for over 8 years on VMware on AWS, so we're really excited to be here to be able to share this with you. I do want to start off by saying this is a foundational level session. So for those of you who saw in the catalog, we are level 100. We will dive into some of the technical details, but the most important thing we're looking to do is to convey to you the concepts and kind of give you a good fundamental understanding of what we're doing with EVS. We do have some time afterwards, and Arthi and I will be happy to jump up here at the front of the stage and hang out until they kick us out of the room and answer any questions you have. Also, we have freshly minted, this is exciting, but freshly minted EVS stickers. So if you'd like to come up and chat with us, we're happy to share those with you as well. So to get started, I guess I could have switched over to our names before. To get started, let's talk about why you would want to run VMware on AWS to begin with. This is a question that's come up a lot. I've actually had it a lot this week where I'd be meeting with a customer and they say, hey, look, we have a plan to move our workloads to native AWS EC2. Why would we even want to consider running VMware? What's the purpose? What's the point of this? And as I talk to these customers, we start talking about the different workloads that they're running and the applications that they have. And really where it makes sense to run VMware on AWS is a few different things. If you have a compelling event that is causing you to have to move quickly, and you need to be able to migrate and lift and shift very, very quickly. Another one is if you have workloads that are very VMware-centric, or it's going to take a considerable amount of effort to get them off of the VMware environment. I'm sure many of you have this, but there's a lot of workloads that are running out there that have just been running for years and years and years, and you really just don't want to end up touching those workloads. And they are very difficult to touch. And we recognize and understand that it's not simple to move every particular application directly into AWS. Another example I heard of this recently is a customer was telling me, look, I know it sounds crazy that in 2024, if you change IP addresses of a VM, that something should break. Like, we've all known forever that we should be basing our applications off of DNS. But they said, look, raising your hand in shame, we have some workloads, if we were to change IP addresses, that would cause a real problem for us and would make migrating really, really challenging. So being able to move these workloads, keep them in a VMware environment, and keep them without having to change IP addresses or change any of the surrounding platform around it, really helps out a lot. And from an AWS perspective, our thinking on this is we understand you have these workloads, and we really want to be able to, if you have to run in VMware, we want to be the best place in the world for you to run those VMware workloads. And that's really the impetus of VMware, the Elastic VMware service. So kind of recapping these pieces, the things that really make a difference, if you're looking to expand or extend your data center, if you're looking to augment the capacity that you have on-prem, if you need to really migrate rapidly and move out of your environment quickly, being able to lift and shift those without having to move off of the VMware platform can be very, very compelling. Another really interesting use case we've seen a lot of is disaster recovery. A lot of folks, they take their old production equipment, and as it's aged out and it's depreciated, they end up converting the old production gear into disaster recovery gear. But then you still end up having to patch, update, upgrade, replace hard drives that have failed or power supplies that have failed. You're still spending a lot of IT effort maintaining this disaster recovery environment. And as we've run the VMware Cloud and AWS offering for the last 8 years, one of the most compelling use cases that we saw customers take advantage of was disaster recovery. Being able to take and through an API or the click of a button, be able to provision a brand new environment and have that up and running was very compelling. And what we do see with a lot of these workloads is it is very much a two-step process. You're lifting and shifting, you're getting out of the data center. Many of these applications, that's the start of their modernization journey. Once they're running in VMware on AWS, that's where you can open up the door to a lot of additional capabilities. So we'll see this with things like databases is a good example. A database has been moved into VMware running on AWS, and being able to expand and extend the capabilities with services like Redshift. Those types of things are very easy to take advantage of once your data is co-resident within the AWS ecosystem. So we've had this service for the last 8 years or so called VMware Cloud and AWS. This was a strategic partnership that we had with VMware that ultimately allowed VMware to build a managed VMware offering directly on AWS infrastructure. So this is a service that is completely owned and operated now by Broadcom and is run as a fully managed service. And so as the Broadcom acquisition of VMware has come in, we got a chance to talk with them about their strategy and what they're doing going forward. And of course, they still have VMware Cloud and AWS today. It's still available today. It's in the market. It's here today, here tomorrow is the statement that's been made. We're really excited that the VMware Cloud continues to operate on AWS. But as we were talking to them about kind of the strategy, we really said, hey, we would love to be able to offer customers more choice. We would love for them to be able to run things besides just in a fully managed environment. We'd love for them to be able to have more capabilities. And you can think about this as like the analogous to how we do things with databases. If you want to run a database on an EC2 instance yourself, you have the ability to do that. If you want a fully managed experience, you can use RDS and provision a fully managed offering there. And so we started talking to Broadcom a little bit about this. We said, hey, this is something we're really interested in doing. They were extremely supportive of this and really liked the vision as well. And so we've partnered with them again with this new Elastic VMware offering and been able to offer additional capabilities. So once we kind of agreed strategically, hey, this is what we're looking to do, we started this working backwards process. And for those of you who've ever read or seen anything about the Amazon working backwards process, what we really do is we start with the customer and we try to understand the customer's needs, the customer's wants, and work our way backwards from that. So we say, okay, what is it that they're trying to accomplish and what can we do with the customer? And let's work backwards from that and actually define our product that way. So we actually write a press release and an FAQ as the very first step. We talk to customers, we understand the challenge, we build the press release first, and then we work backwards all the way through building the product. And so as we went back and talked to customers, we said, hey, we're starting with a clean slate. What is it that you really want in VMware capabilities on AWS? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is it that would be most helpful to you? What is it that you like about our existing solutions? And as we did that, we heard a few different things. We heard, hey, the things I really love about VMware Cloud and AWS is it was simple. It was very simple to operate. I could click a few buttons and I could have an environment up and running extremely quickly. Speed was the other one. Think about how long it has traditionally taken to deploy a VMware environment on-prem. You're ordering hardware, you're rack and stacking, you're cabling, you're deploying the operating system, you're configuring the network, you're configuring the storage. When I was talking to customers a lot, they would say this process is 3 to 5 months to get an environment from the time the purchase order is signed all the way through the time the environment is ready to run VMs. That takes a really long time. And what we continued to hear about VMware Cloud was that it was really great to be able to click a button and have a fully functional environment within 2 hours. So from the button click to the ready to run VMs within 2 hours, that was something that they found compelling. So the speed was really, really important. Scalability was another thing we heard that customers really wanted in a VMware solution. They wanted the ability to elastically scale the environment. Hey, today I may need 4 hosts. I may have a project coming up in a month that's going to require me to have 6 hosts. And then after that project is done, I can go back down to 4 hosts. So having that elasticity and the scalability was something that was super important. So we also heard a lot about things that they didn't like. What was it that was challenging about previous VMware solutions, not just on VMware Cloud, but out in the market? And a couple things we heard there was control. Control was really challenging. In an on-prem environment, customers typically have full control of their VMware environment. Everybody has full root access. If they want to go in and install a VIB within ESXi, they could do that. If they wanted to configure it a certain way, they had all the knobs and dials available to them, and they could do that. But in managed cloud services, it was always a little bit more difficult because you had delegated access. You did not have that full root access. You were operating within a more controlled environment. So we kept hearing from customers, I would like to have more control over my VMware environment so that I can more closely match my on-premises configuration. The other one is flexibility. Having the flexibility to configure the environment, to have more choice, be able to add additional or use different host types or use different storage operations, and to consume it in different ways. Like, hey, I may not need this thing for 3 years. I may only need it for 6 months. But having to purchase something in 3-year increments and depreciate that hardware was also not very compelling. And so we heard a lot of these things about, I really like the flexibility, the speed, the simplicity and scalability, and I'm really struggling with the control and flexibility and choice. These are the things that I would like more of. So we took all of this feedback as we were hearing from customers, and we started thinking about, what is it that we're actually going to build, and how would this work? And what we came up with is the Elastic VMware Service. So this was built, or this was announced just a week ago, or 2 weeks ago now. And this is a new service that we are launching in preview here at reInvent that allows customers to run VMware VCF directly on EC2 Metal instances within their own VPC. So this is a self-managed solution. So this gives you full control of the environment. You're effectively using AWS Metal infrastructure just as you would have used on-premises physical server infrastructure. So you have the ability to provision a fully functional VCF stack running directly within your VPC. You retain control of your architecture. One of the key tenets that we were trying to get to was we wanted customers to be able to configure this environment as closely to their on-premises configuration as they could. And the reason for that is, again, as a migration tool, as the ability to migrate, the closer the source is to the closer the destination is to the source, the less changes you have to make. And so it was really important for us to try to build a solution that allowed you to keep your source and destination as close as possible, both from an architectural standpoint as well as from an operational and configuration standpoint. So if you think about this on a spectrum, on the far left here you have self-managed. This is your traditional on-prem environment. And then on the far right-hand side, you have fully managed services like VMware Cloud and AWS, which are very prescriptive in the configuration, but they do everything for you. They take care of all of the patching, updating, and upgrading. So you kind of have this spectrum of like, well, do I want control or do I want the undifferentiated heavy lifting removed? And so we were thinking about this. We said, well, we could copy and paste a fully managed service, but then you're not going to have that control and flexibility you're looking for. And the self-managed solution really doesn't give you doesn't take away that undifferentiated heavy lifting. It doesn't take care of a lot of the stuff that you would have to deal with yourself. So as we were thinking about this, we really shot for that sweet spot in the middle with EVS. So with EVS, we will take care of all the physical infrastructure. If a power supply fails in a server, or if there's any type of physical infrastructure problem, that is dealt with as a part of the EC2 instance. We take care of that for you. But you have the flexibility and control to actually configure the VMware stack itself within VCF to how you want. And if any of you have ever read some of our shareholder letters, Andy Jassy talked about how at Amazon we try to build primitives. And these are primitives that other people can then build on top of. And it's really a thing we thought a lot about with EVS. We wanted to build primitives that you could run directly. You could take those and build those as your environment directly. But we also wanted partners to be able to build on top of these as well. And so while EVS is a self-managed solution, one of the things we've done is we've already started working with a lot of the managed service provider partners in the community. And they're actively working right now on building managed service offerings on top of EVS. And so if you now have more choice, you will have the choice to either take this and build it yourself, or there's going to be managed service offerings from partners where they will actually take care of a lot of the patching, updating, and upgrading, replacing of failed hosts, and a lot of the work that you may not want to do directly within your teams. And of course, VMware Cloud and AWS is still available today as well from Broadcom. So a little bit about EVS, just kind of hitting the basics of what the solution actually is. So it is an automated provisioning, it has automated provisioning capabilities. So with EVS, Arthi will show this to you here in a bit, but we'll actually go into the console you can select all the configuration information that we expose to you and provide those inputs and then click deploy. And we will automatically deploy and configure that environment for you, matching that configuration. So all of the stitching together the physical infrastructure and actually implementing the configuration of the software stack, that is all done as a part of the EBS boot up process or the bootstrapping process. Behind the scenes, we're actually taking a lot of that information that you give us and we're passing it into Cloud Builder. So for any of you that have messed around with VCF's Cloud Builder capabilities, we're taking that input data, we're pushing it into Cloud Builder. We're configuring the underlying networking components, the physical infrastructure, and that software stack bring up all together so that you get the speed. You get the ability to click a button or make an API call and fully provision this environment automatically. This is running on EC2 bare metal instances, so this is not some kind of nested virtualization situation, or this isn't hardware sitting in a co-location facility that we're like piping through with dark fiber or anything crazy like that. This is actual EC2 metal infrastructure that is a part of a VPC. It is, if you were to go provision a standard EC2 metal instance, we're doing effectively the exact same thing, using that same component within EC2, but we're deploying the VMware software stack on top of that. So it's I4I metal instances is the instance we're starting with, and it's going to be a dedicated host. So effectively using EVS will provision a standard EC2 metal instance running the VMware software stack. And one important point here is that this is standard VCF. This is not some special build of VCF that is made just for us that has different different underlying software components, that may break or behave differently. We're taking the commercial off-the-shelf version of VCF, the same bits that you would download and deploy in an on-prem environment. We're taking those and we're making that function within the AWS infrastructure. So it is not something that's going to be radically different from your on-prem environment. It will be the same VCF 5.2.1 that you have today. And of course, as we iterate and launch additional versions, those will be available as well. The key tenets, I think you've heard me probably mention them a few different times, but as we really kind of zeroed in on what are the most important critical components of this solution for us, our key tenets really evolved around control, flexibility, and choice. So on the control side, you have full administrative access to these instances. Since it's running directly in your VPC, all of the normal AWS stuff works. So if you want to use tagging, you can use tagging. If you look inside of CloudTrail to see actions that are taking place, it behaves just like any other AWS service using all of the built-in AWS components. So you have complete control as well as all those control mechanisms that you would normally apply through your AWS account will work with EVS. On the flexibility side, this is something that we really are excited about, and the ability for customers to be able to consume EVS in multiple consumption models. So on-demand usage, 1-year usage, and 3-year usage. So you'll be able to provision a VCF cluster, a VCF environment, and you can pay for it by the hour. And so you don't have to commit to this for 3 years. If you want to run it for 2 days, you can run it for 2 days. If you know you have a longer term project that maybe lasts a year, you can commit to it for a year or even 3 years beyond that. And importantly, one of the things that we get a lot of questions about right now is about the software. There's a lot of emphasis and a lot of folks thinking about VCF software right now. I know it's a very hot topic for a lot of individuals. So a couple things on the VCF software stack. The first is, as we launch this into general availability, we're going to launch it in a bring your own subscription model. So we know a lot of folks right now, they're buying VCF software subscriptions. They have those for their on-prem environment. As you have those subscriptions and you move those, you want to move those workloads to the cloud, you can actually bring those VCF software subscriptions with you and apply those into VCF. So I mentioned earlier, like we get a bunch of inputs from you in the beginning when we're starting to provision the environment. One of those inputs we get from you is the software subscription information. So you provide that to us. We'll inject that into the VCF deployment as we're bringing it up. After GA, one of the things one of our top priorities post-GA is to support license included. So we'll get a license included option going pretty quickly. That will allow you to ultimately check a box or indicate to us that you would like the VCF software subscription to be included with that. And so the intention there is if you have enough VCF core subscriptions to support a 4-node cluster and you need to add a 5th node, you can actually mix and match these things, bring your own subscription for the first 4 nodes, and then you could have a license included option for the 5th node. And then if you no longer need that 5th node, being able to turn it back down and you're still using your subscriptions there. So we hope that gives a lot of flexibility to customers in how they choose to use this, whether they want to commit to a full 3 years or if it's a part of a shorter-term migration effort. We expect that there's going to be a lot of variability here where customers are scaling up as they have more need to run workloads on VMware and scale down over time and kind of rinse and repeat as they're migrating those workloads. The next thing is on choice. I mentioned earlier we have effectively the self-managed capability that you can run yourself. There's the Broadcom's VMware Cloud and AWS solution, which is fully managed, and there's going to be a whole lot of partner solutions available as well. And I think this is going to be really interesting. Going from effectively what we've had for the last 7-8 years is a single VMware solution. If you wanted VMware on AWS, there was one option available to you, and that was VMware Cloud. Going forward, we're going to go from one solution to potentially 10, 12 solutions as partners build their own managed service offerings using EVS. So you'll be able to use VMware Cloud if you would like. You'll be able to use EVS directly as a self-managed solution, or you'll be able to leverage partner-managed solutions. And a number of partners are working right now on building those managed capabilities. All right, enough from me. Hopefully that gave you a quick understanding of the basics of the solution. Running on i4i Metal instances, being able to deploy directly within your VPC, the consumption model we talked about, license included, bring your own subscription, the ability to elastically scale up and scale down. I hope that gives you just kind of a basic fundamental understanding of what EVS is. What I want to do now is hand it over to Arti and have Arti run through the actual technical solution. So we'll get a little bit deeper here and go into the weeds. And then we're going to do the thing that you should almost never do. We're going to do a live demo. And fun fact, I asked Arti, I was like, Arti, do you have a recording if something goes wrong? This is preview service here. We're going to go do a live demo. And she's like, no recording. We're going to run this thing live. So I need a lot of positive vibes from everybody in the room. Like, whatever you can send us to hopefully, live demos go well. I know it'll go great. But we'll go through a live demo, actually show you what this thing looks like for the first time. All right, Arti, over to you.
Thank you. Great. So what we'll do for the rest of the session is Andy kind of set the context on what we are building. I'll cover the technical overview, some of the primitives that Andy was talking about, and how we built it. And also, given it is a preview service, we will talk about some of the supported configurations, what is supported at launch, et cetera, as we go through the session. The core is, as Andy said, we're giving you customers the ability to run VMware Cloud Foundation directly on the AWS's global infrastructure. When we were sitting down for the system design and the PRFAQ process, one of the things we were, as part of our design tenets, is how do we keep it consistent from two perspectives. One is, you folks are familiar with the VMware ecosystem of products, NSX, vSAN, vSphere, et cetera. So as we think about migrating workloads from on-premises into EVS, we wanted that experience to be consistent. So what did we do? We talked to customers to understand what is complex during these migrations, what comes up. Networking came up as a top challenge. Hey, firewall rules. There's a lot of challenges when it comes to bandwidth, throughput, et cetera. We have these VMs, as Andy mentioned, hard-coded IP addresses that we cannot change. So we took that feedback. So what we did was, as we worked internally, and with VCF, with the whole Cloud Builder deployment experience, we focused on two areas. We said, hey, we're going to take this operational overhead from customers. One is the entire deployment of using Cloud Builder, and I'll walk you through some details. Getting as much as minimal inputs from you, and then automating the deployment experience for you. So you'll see it on the console where we get in a couple of inputs like your VPC, your subnet, DNS, et cetera, and then deploying the whole stack, the VCF stack, using Cloud Builder. The second, the networking challenges that I talked about, getting NSX to run on the Amazon VPC is a challenge for us. With VMware Cloud on AWS, VMware had to do a number of solutions to get it working. And historically, as you're thinking about layer 2 networking and how it's run on premises, we wanted to keep that experience consistent. So we internally built, there was a huge engineering effort on our side to abstract some of that, so that at the end of the day, for you as a customer, you should be able to run your workload domains, your applications as exactly the same manner that you run on premises. So that was the first thing we wanted, going back to that consistency across both environments. The second thing is a number of you also use AWS environments today. So we wanted to ensure that that deployment that I'm talking about is similar to you going into an AWS console, clicking launch instance, and an EC2 instance comes up. And a number of our customers with VMware Cloud on AWS, as we talked, utilize some of these AWS services, S3, for example, or FSx for NetApp ONTAP, CloudWatch for monitoring, or CloudTrail for logs. So we wanted to make sure there is integration options available for you. And given it's running in your VPC, it made our lives much easier. But we wanted to provide that consistent experience both on the VMware side of products and the AWS infrastructure. What we'll do is there's typically 4 building blocks that I'm going to be talking about. One is the software stack itself, that is VCF, what we're doing. The second one is compute, and then storage and networking. So those are the 4 primary areas that actually make up the primitives that Andy was talking about. As you take a look at the software stack itself, so we're deploying it in your VPC. That's the outer boundary that you see here. You pick a region of your choice, and you select a VPC that you own in your own account. And I did want to call out, right? That's a big difference for folks that are familiar with VMware Cloud on AWS and how a managed service was running. It was running inside an AWS account that VMware owned. So here, given it's a self-managed, it's in your control, you run it inside your own VPC in an account. And then you have the Amazon EVS virtualization environment. So the VCF stack that you see here, it's commercial off the shelf. It's standard VCF 5.2.1. That's what we are beginning with. And as new versions come in, we'll follow up with newer versions as well. For preview, it's going to be 5.2.1. And we take care of that deployment through the VMware Cloud Builder. So we get inputs, as I mentioned, and take care of the deployment. So you'll see we'll create an environment, we'll go into some of the details, and then you have your hosts that come up, and then we hand the keys to you and say, hey, go run your application now. And it's a standard set of products that come as part of VCF. Your vSphere, vSAN, NSX, SDDC manager gets deployed as part of this offering. And then these VCF instances run inside your VPC, as I mentioned. And the key thing is, given it's in your VPC, you're able to see these EC2 instances. You have full root access. You have SSH access. You'll see when you create a host, you'll have to give it a key pair, and then you have full control. What this enables is some feedback that we've got around control from our customers is, hey, I've been using this backup solution for years in my on-premises environment, and I want to continue that relationship with this backup vendor, and I want to use that. But there are some backup solutions that require web access, for example. And so now, with earlier VMware Cloud on AWS, we've had some guardrails around what permissions you have. You did not have root access. There's a lot of good backup solutions that work as well, but you didn't have root access. So that prevented some of our customers from using specific backup solutions that they may be familiar with. So with this, given you have root access, you can integrate with any solutions that you want as long as you validate it. It's a validated solution. And then finally, it's deployed on the AWS console. So I'll show you a quick sneak peek, as Andy said. So as you go into the AWS console, this is a service that will be available. The way we're thinking about the console is we're not saying, hey, you got to do all your VMware operations on the AWS console. That was not the intent. Our intent with the launching it as a first-party AWS service is we are automating and simplifying that deployment experience for you. And then you have your vCenter, like your normal vCenter that you're used to, that you take care of all your VM operations. That still continues as it is. From a compute perspective, as Andy mentioned, we are starting with i4i.metal. The reason we chose i4i.metal is we've got some good history with running i4i.metal with VMware Cloud on AWS and customers running mission-critical workloads, and we do have some good benchmarking performance characteristics with i4i.metal. So these are Intel-based. It has 75 gigs of network throughput, 30 terabytes of raw storage that you'll see. These are instances, so it does have this. And The good thing with I4I, as you're thinking, is the primary storage is still vSAN. So we're utilizing vSAN for the primary storage. But as I talked, you have root access to these instances. So on premises, if you're using any kind of storage for your supplemental data stores, for example, using an NFS mount point, that should still work. We're not limiting you, so you can add additional storage. We're also working with some of these partners as well that you probably use on premises to get them validated. And then networking. A lot of this comes to, hey, I'm migrating on premises into EVS, or I want to maintain a hybrid environment. How does connectivity work? Fairly straightforward. As you can see, you've got the compute and storage, and then I have my VDS, and then I have my layer 2 networks that are running. From a connectivity perspective, everything goes through the transit gateway. Anything that's going out of this VPC is going to go through a transit gateway, and then connecting either using an AWS VPN or a direct connect, depending on the choice. You might already have a direct connect if you are using AWS accounts to talk back into your on-premises environment. So that kind of covers the software stack, compute, storage, and networking. It's very high level. We'll be happy to chat into if you have specific questions and details around it. How do you get started? There's a few new primitives that we've built for EVS, and I kind of wanted to go over it with you. Starting with the virtualization environment. So think of a virtualization environment as basically, it's a logical container that basically has all resources associated with your VCF deployment. And then you have host groups. A host group, if you think about it, it defines what your network and server settings are. So if you think about it, I go in and create a host group, and I say, hey, these are going to be, it's a host group that contains i4i.metal. That's going to be my initial instance type, but we'll launch more instance types as we GA the product. And you can also set for things like eventually placement group settings. So think of it as basically just a config file that has, hey, this is going to be that config file, and when you add hosts, you don't have to go configure these hosts manually. You can just say, hey, this is part of this particular host group. And then finally, you have the hosts. These are nothing but EC2 instances, the i4i.metal EC2 instances that we talked about. So these three are the new constructs you will start seeing on the console as well as part of Amazon EVS. We just started gated preview, so we will have customers and partners start using the service in gated preview. So a few quick reminders as we think about gated preview. This might not be applicable for GA, of course. So the host groups, we are limiting, I think it's one host group per environment. And you can see the minimum 4 hosts comes from a VCF requirement. It's not, we're not adding any special requirement here. VCF requires a 4-node deployment. So we're going to go with a 4 hosts minimum to begin with. And then we're going to support consolidated domain at preview. And then as we go through GA, we'll look at other options that are available. With that, I would be more than happy if the demo gods are in my favor to show you the demo. I think I'm not going to show this dinosaur in a teacup. That was the Amazon Nova demo, if I remember. I'm going to show you the AWS Amazon EVS console. I was telling Andy, I think 8 years back when we started, never would I have imagined to have a VMware entity within the AWS console. So here we go. Is it this one? Okay. Okay, so as you can see here, so we're still in preview. So my account is allow listed. So this is our home page. So the 3 components that I talked about, these are new primitives. So the virtualization environment, host groups, and hosts, those are the 3 things that I talked about. But as you can see here, so this is the overview page. So I went ahead and created a virtualization environment. So you can see it basically shows you what the environment is, what host groups are associated with this environment, and the hosts that are associated. It also shows how many EC2 instances I do have running. I did tell you folks it's 4 instances, which is still correct. I just spun up 3 metal instances, and I thought I'll do one when we do this demo. So it also shows the other networking constructs. One thing I do want to call out here, right? There's a lot of constructs here that will still link you back into EC2 because, again, we're part of the AWS console, and what you're launching is nothing special. It's an EC2 instance, so we're still part of the EC2 console. The route tables that you see, the transit gateway connectivity that we talked about, these all are part of the EVS console, but you can also access it from your VPC, and DNS, for example, goes through Route 53. So as you can see here, I went ahead and created a virtualization environment. So all it does is it has a name, it has an environment ID, type is VCF. We will eventually, the reasoning behind the type is eventually we'll also have versioning associated with it. We're going with 5.2.1 for launch. The VPC that I have in my account, and then the subnet that I choose. The subnet is specifically from a service access subnet. This is similar to how other services like EKS, for example, or NLB has it. So this is a subnet that our service, like our control plane, will basically use to automate that deployment and simplify and automate that deployment that I talk about.
It is a good point to bring up. Here we go, maybe? All right. So it is a good point to mention that that service access account, we do have persistent access into the environment. So as a part of a service offering running in AWS, the EVS control plane effectively maintains a persistent connection into this environment. So you will have to allow this service to communicate into vCenter so that we can be able to see what's happening inside the environment and keep that in sync with what the console displays.
So you'll see here the deployment status is not deployed because I haven't. So if you think about the hierarchy, you go in and create your virtualization environment where you tell us what's the VPC, what's the subnet, et cetera. And then you go in and create the host groups here. So if you look at the host groups, so as I said, it's a config file basically for us. So it has what instance type you're using, at least now. We'll add more configurations into it as we expand for other new features that come up that apply across the host. And you'll see here what your host management network is. There's additional networks that are required for like vSAN, NSX, et cetera. There's a bunch of networks that will be part of the deployment itself. And then once you have the host groups, you go ahead and you can see I have 3 hosts configured here. So you'll see the hosts here. OK. So these are I4I metal instances, EC2 instances that has an IP. It's part of a host group, as you see here. So when you go into like create host, this is basically what it's going to ask you. So you select what the environment is, you select the group, and then you give it a DNS. We expect you to configure the DNS and the IP ahead of time. And the demo gods are tricking me now. Okay. And then you give it a DNS and an IP address and click create host. The operation takes anywhere between like 10 to 15 minutes for the host to come up. So once you have the host come up, that is it. I think the end-to-end deployment from when you start your virtualization environment from like the cloud builder setup to when you get everything up and running, we're still in preview, so we're doing a lot of tests. So we're looking at around like 3 hours right now, 3 to 3.5 hours for the full deployment. The majority of the chunk is for the host deployments only take 10 minutes. The majority of the time is for the initial cloud builder setup that goes through a series of like validations. I believe it has like 12 to 18 steps of validation that it needs to go through to complete the deployment. So that's kind of like a quick overview of the EVS console itself. We're just sharing the console for the first time today externally, so I'm glad at least it's showing up. I think just to go back.
Well, a couple of the questions that have come up on this as we've talked about it to customers throughout the week is, hey, can I just go into the EC2 console and add my own I4I instance and go that route? And the answer is no. Like the only way to deploy a new host into this EVS environment is through the EVS console. That way we can ensure that the configuration is consistent with the actual VCF environment. and it's not going to behave in an unexpected manner. So effectively, it's running standard AWS infrastructure, all the standard AWS components under the covers, but ultimately the EVS control plane is what's deploying and configuring those resources within your account. So if you need to add a new host, you go into EVS, as Arthi showed, you're able to add a host and deploy that into the environment. Same operation for replace host and all of those things. There's also a fully functional API under the covers here, so we obviously build this in more of an API-first model, so anything that you see that you can do within the console, you can also do programmatically within the API as well. We will be iterating on this very, very quickly. So I think I get a lot of questions like, "Hey, I4I, is that going to be the only instance type?" The answer is no. We're going to move very, very quickly to qualify and launch really every x86-based metal instance that AWS has to offer that will support VMware. Going back to those key tenets, flexibility, choice, and control, we want to give you as much choice as possible and as much flexibility as possible. So I think whereas maybe in the past there were only a few options available to run VMware on AWS, we will be pushing really, really hard for more choice and more capabilities. Arthi mentioned also on the storage side, that's another area that we're going to be leaning in quite hard on, is giving you more storage options available, so external storage options in addition to vSAN, as well as the same thing about the consolidated domains versus separate workload and management domains. We'll be working on those types of things as well. So it's going to be an exciting time next year. Again, we're just getting started with this. We're very excited to be able to share this with you in preview. I get asked a lot of questions around the GA date, around pricing, all of that type of stuff. We'll have more information on that to come early next year as we're working through the preview process. And we'll continue to make posts and share information as we go throughout that. We have a little bit of time left. We did have a page I wanted to link to up on the screen. If you're interested in participating in the preview, the preview right now is pretty full up, but as customers complete their testing and we have more space available within the preview program, we will be pulling more folks in as we can. So if it's something that interests you and you'd like to learn more, please fill out the form, and that'll let us get in touch with you, and we'll be able to talk to you about your needs and see if EVS will really meet your requirements. Again, wanted to say thank you so much for spending the time with us today. One thing we would like to ask, it's super, super helpful. Arthi and I go through feedback from every single session we have done together over the last 8 years, and we've gotten some incredible feedback, and we try to incorporate that each year as we go along into these sessions and talk about the things that are most important to you. This is for you, and we hope it's valuable to you. So please, if you could take a moment, leave us feedback, tell us how we did, tell us what you think we could do better, and we will endeavor to incorporate that feedback going forward. We'll take the time we have left. Arthi and I'll jump down here in front of the stage, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have until they give us the boot and kick us out of the room. I hope you enjoy the rest of reInvent. Thank you so much for taking the time, and take care.
Thank you, folks.